Just give me a moment. Yeah, we're good. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode, another edition of our 1883 Club Meet series. My name is Daniel Evans. I'm the Chief Executive here at Birmingham Enterprise Community. Really excited to be joined by Kim today. Going to let Kim kind of introduce herself in a moment, and we'll be jumping straight into the conversation. Big hello to everybody joining us live in the Air Meets platform, our 1883 Club members and guests. Also to those of you in the wider audience watching the stream, hello to you all. Really excited to have you all with us today. There is a live conversation going on, so you can drop in your comments, drop in your questions, on both platforms. We'll pick them up as we go. As usual with the format, we'll be having a bit of a chat with Kim, diving into some different issues. And then in the kind of second part of the event, our members will have a chance to personally chat with Kim, go on a bit of a deeper dive into some of the things that we have. So, Kim, thank you so much for joining us here today. Be fantastic if you could start with a bit of an introduction as to who you are.
First of all, I'm thrilled to be here. It's so exciting to talk to people on the other side of the world almost. Not exactly, but pretty close. Again, my name is Kim Ades. I am the president and founder of a company called Frame of Mind Coaching. I've been doing this for 16 years, and essentially we coach entrepreneurs, executives, leaders, the highly driven population, and we use a very unique method for doing this. And at this point, I have a team of coaches in Canada and the US, and we train people in this method of coaching that a lot of leaders use with their employees, with their team members, even with their children. And so I'm happy to have this discussion with you and happy to answer any and all questions that anyone could come up with. It's my pleasure to be here.
That's absolutely awesome. And yeah, definitely for us, having different people, different opinions from people not just here in the UK but right across the world is something that we're super passionate about. So yeah, let's get on with it. Let's get straight in. So maybe then for kind of context and building on that, be really interesting if you share kind of how you got into this. What made you do what you're currently doing now?
So you could call me a serial entrepreneur. A lot of coaches, they kind of lead with their coaching skills. And while I'm an amazing coach, I'm really an entrepreneur. And so before this company, I had another one. And what we used to do was build simulation-based assessments to help companies make better hiring decisions when assessments or simulations weren't even cool yet. Right? The technology was really dated, but we were at the forefront of creating these simulations. And one of the things that we discovered when we were testing hundreds of thousands of people to figure out who's going to be a top performer. Is it their intellect? Is it their skill set? Is it their background, their experience? What makes a top performer in any industry? And what was very interesting to us is that regardless of industry, regardless of position, there was one key factor that always would help us predict a top performer, and that was their degree of emotional resilience. And that is not emotional intelligence. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about resilience. And what is resilience? It's the ability to bounce back from adversity with speed and agility, and, this is very important, and leverage the adversity somehow, turn it into an advantage. And so, yeah, go ahead.
No, go on, carry on.
So that was part of my background. The second part was that I ended up selling my company, and right away, within a few weeks of selling my company, I got recruited as the VP of marketing for a coaching company here in Toronto. And I was super excited. Their mandate was to help people live extraordinary lives. And I thought, yes, that's for me. And so I started working there, and I lasted about 8.5 months. Number one, because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not really good at working for other people. But number two is that I had a chance to look at how they coach. And I thought to myself, gee, I think they're doing it wrong. I think I could do a better job. And they're not leveraging some of the primary principles of helping people reach their goals. And so I walked away and I said, I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to call it Frame of Mind Coaching. And rather than building a coaching model based on, creating a plan and holding people accountable to that plan, which all sounds very good, what I'm going to do really is I'm going to help people understand what stops them from performing, what gets in the way. I'm going to help them move that stuff out of the way. And that's when Frame of Mind Coaching was born.
Fantastic. That's super interesting. And I guess building on that then, coaching, mentoring, those are kind of terms we hear used a lot. We sometimes hear them used interchangeably, sometimes out of context as well. Let's get straight into really what is coaching.
Okay, so what's the difference between coaching and mentoring is that mentoring is typically when someone has experience in a very specific industry, field, in a specific job. And so when I go to a mentor, I want their experience. I want to leverage or extract their experience in that role, in that job, in that industry, with respect to their connections, etc. Very, very useful. A coach's function is something different. And there are lots of different coaches out there. There are health coaches, there are nutrition coaches, there are business coaches, there are leadership coaches, mindset coaches, relationship coaches, all kinds of things. And so what is a coach's function is to help the person identify what they really actually want and then help them in some way lay out a path to achieving that goal.
Awesome. I think that's a really good explanation. And I think for us, we've certainly seen people really unsure of either. So kind of then back away and say, well, is this person a coach? Are they a mentor? What do I need? What don't I need? But really we're saying that mentoring is about tapping into expertise and getting knowledge from that. Whereas a coach is really about helping you to unlock the best of you.
Well, yes, some coaches do that by helping you build a plan and holding you accountable to that plan. Other coaches do it by saying, here, just do this. I'm telling you what to do. Follow my instructions. You'll get there. For me, neither of those things are sustainable. I don't like those ideas. What I want to do is help the leaders that we work with understand where they keep getting stuck, trapped, where they keep getting buried. And I want to help them once and for all move those barriers out of the way so that they can be performers over and over and over again.
Awesome. And I think speaking of kind of the things that people get stuck on, right at the start, one of the things that we regularly see is people come to us for help and we'll say, well, what are you trying to do? Like, what is that end goal? What is that end point you're trying to reach? And sometimes they just don't know. How does somebody begin to unravel that and figure out what that destination is that they're actually trying to get to?
So my experience is that people really do know what it is that they want. They have trouble believing that it can be so. And that's a different problem from being able to know or knowing what it is that they truly want. And so from the get-go, when you have a conversation that sounds like, hey, what is it that you really want? Very often that conversation will arrive with a series of limitations. And so they come to the table restricting themselves from the very beginning. So they're not actually telling you what they really want. They're telling you what they believe is possible for them, which is usually quite narrow, quite small, quite limited.
Mm-hmm. And is that something that people could unravel themselves, or do they need a coach, or does it depend on the person?
Well, I think it's, of course, possible to unravel it yourself, but I think it's harder to unravel it yourself. From my perspective, it's kind of like being inside a bottle and trying to read the label. It's hard to see it from that perspective. Is it doable? Sure. Place the bottle in front of a mirror, read backwards. It's challenging, right? But, right? So that's the concept right there. My experience is that when leaders work with a coach, and not just any coach, a skilled coach, their progress happens at a much more rapid rate. Now, is it doable? Sure. But you still need a tactic or strategy for making that happen. One of the things that we do when we coach our leaders is, in addition to our weekly coaching calls, we ask our clients to journal in an online journal every single day. And every time they journal, their journal goes back to their coach, who reads and responds to their journal. So this is happening every day, sometimes multiple times a day. So it's a very intimate and intense experience. The thing is, can an individual journal on their own and use their journal to coach themselves forward? Absolutely. They need to know how to journal, what to ask themselves, how to read their journals, and then use that content as critical information.
That's super interesting. And is that really about people's being able to put that down into paper or whatever format, and then stepping back and looking at it again? Is it almost that taking yourself out the bottle and removing you from that situation and looking at it from an independent angle?
Well, that's exactly it. So, when you journal, you have to ask yourself some questions. And when you're answering the questions, answer them truthfully, honestly, openly, but then go back and look at how did you answer them? And what are the patterns that you see after you answer a series of questions? And what are the things that keep coming up for you over and over and over again that keep you stuck in your place? And so it's not only, it's asking the right questions, it's answering them honestly, and then going back to do some analysis to say, what is it that keeps getting in my way? And what am I doing to keep that alive and fueled? What am I doing to fuel that problem?
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the habit forming that you need to create here, because it's not something you just journal once and then all of a sudden you unlock this exceptional level of performance. And also it's that time, even after a few days, a week, it takes time to see results here. A lot of people, because of that, then suffer with discipline and not being able to form it as a habit. How do you get around that?
Well, it's very interesting, right? When we use the term discipline, does it sound like fun? No. So I never think about journaling as something I need discipline to do. I never do. I think of it as a release, like as a place to unload. Kind of like, some people unload by having a drink at the end of the day, or some people, watch a show at night. So it's a place to like put your stuff down. You come home after a hard day, you want to put your bag down, your coat down, you want to change your clothes. It's like that. And so when we think about it differently, the experience is less, you could say heavy to manage. That's thing number one. Thing number two is that you use the word habits, and it's a really interesting word because it's not that I want anybody to acquire the habit of journaling. What I want people to do is look at the habits that they have that are causing them to feel pain, suffering, and to reach their goals at a much slower pace. So habits are really critical in this discussion. What habits do we take on that we believe are useful but are really hurting us in the long run?
Okay, that's interesting. That's really interesting. And where does, because I guess for some people is it that then the unloading and because I know that if I spoke to somebody or I got something down, we've all I guess had those times where we've got an email together in response, and actually just the act of putting that email together has been like, okay, I'm a bit more chilled out in this situation. Is it that benefit that gives us then what would bring people to come back and do it again and again?
So, I mean, when you're journaling with a coach, right, the thing that brings you back is that your coach is reading and responding to your journal. So it's a conversation. So when you write something, you want to know what your coach has to say. You want to know what is your coach's reaction and how are they responding to what you've written. So that's piece number one. Piece number two is we want to remove journaling from the equation of performance. And what I mean by that is journaling well isn't a thing, right? Like there's not a person who journals better than another person, right? There's no performance measurement when it comes to journaling. Just journal. It doesn't have to be well written. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. It doesn't have to be brilliant or eloquent. Just journal. You're not getting marked for it. So we're trying to remove the stress around performance when it comes to journaling. Having said that, what's in your journal helps us understand why you perform the way you do.
Okay. Yeah. And it's really then the coach unpicking that, working with you, helping you to see from that external perspective what's going on, that helps with your understanding of how your actions affect your performance.
100%. And I mean, I'll give you a really simple example. I'm working with a gentleman who's like this creative, go-getting, really successful entrepreneur in the health industry. And I'll just leave it at that. And, he's journaling about the fact that he's looking for a new location to rent for his office. But he goes in there and he asks them how much it is to buy it. And they say it's not for sale. Now, is that interesting information for you? It's fascinating information for me as a coach. Why? Because this place is for rent. It's not for sale. He's going in under the premise of renting it, but he changes the game on them. Right? He changes the rules. And so for me, he's changing the rules as a habit. That's his pattern. There are rules established. He never follows the rules. And so this benefits him a lot of times, but sometimes it doesn't. And we want to look at that. We want to look at where, there are rules of engagement that are established and he's pushing back on that. And so what you might think is inconsequential or uninteresting or unimportant for me is really interesting. Right? Because that's how I pick up patterns. And that's what you want to do when you're journaling is look back and say, what are my patterns of behavior? How do I react to things in a similar way given different situations or circumstances? And that's really vital, really important. It helps you learn about your strengths and your secret sauce, you could say, but it also helps you understand your Achilles heel and where you have gaps or behaviors that are backfiring on you and not allowing you to perform at your highest level.
I think that's super interesting because there are times where, you feel that you could conquer anything, you're performing well, you're being really productive, times when you're not, and times when, you can't figure out what that gap is. I guess without logging that, how do you know that? And we've seen a lot, if you look at physical health, people with conditions, IBS or diabetes like that, one of the big things they do for them now is journal it, track it, make sure we've got a record, because then if we can see those patterns, we can develop a correlation between something that you've done and then the results that come there. And the same here is, I guess what you're saying is, if we can see what is causing you to have those good days, that you're super productive, you're performing, you're excelling, and see what's causing you to have those bad days, we can map that out so we can get more good than bad.
Yes, and let's go even a step further. It's not only what causes you to have a good day and what causes you to have a bad day, but when something bad happens, how do you process that? How do you react to it? How do you think about that? How does it affect you and how does it affect the way you see yourself? And so those things are important too. It's not only what happened to cause me to have a good day, but how do I respond to the things that are happening in my world? And that question is important because your response is in your control. Oftentimes we don't feel like it's in our control, but it absolutely is.
And do you think that this really gives, because for some people it is that element of control, not realizing what they do. Do you think it gives people that empowerment to realize how their actions affect that performance?
It's a game changer. Like, honestly, once you understand how you process things and you understand that the way you process things is 100% in your control, in your hands, now you can make strategic decisions. Whereas before, decisions were being made for you and you were just accepting them. You weren't really making decisions. You were at the mercy of the decisions that were happening.
That's massive. That is massive. Bart's asked a question here. It's quite an interesting question. So are people more real when they can write it down versus having to admit it face to face?
So I will say two things. Number one is when we coach people, we don't use Zoom. Like, it's all virtual. We use a conference line so we don't see them face to face. And the reason we do that is because they are more honest when they don't have someone looking at them with eyes in front of them. So 100%. Having said that, are people always honest when they journal? No, they are not. But a really amazing coach can ask the right questions regardless of what they are supplying. And when we ask the right questions and gather enough data points, we see the cycle, we see the response, and we can sift through even if a person is protecting themselves up front and perhaps spinning a slightly different tale. So a really good coach with enough data points can see right through that.
That's super interesting. And I guess for you guys, knowing the truth and knowing what's real, you're working then with the reality of the situation.
But here's the thing, like, let me just show you something. You take your finger in front of you, and everybody who's watching, do it with me. You look at your finger, close one eye. Close one eye. Now switch eyes. What happened?
Moves.
Your finger moves, right? So did your finger actually move?
No, hands completely still.
So which eye is the truth telling the truth?
Neither. Well, both.
Well,
neither.
Fascinating, right? So if your two eyes are telling two different stories, then what is actually truth? Is my truth more true than your truth? Is my left eye's truth more true than my right eye's truth? There's no such thing as truth per se. There's perspective. So my left eye sees one perspective and my right eye sees another perspective. And so what I'm really interested in is, what is your perspective? Whether it's truth or not has no relevance or bearing. Right? Isn't that interesting?
That's super interesting. And I guess it's where we see people that are, we hear the term sometimes, they believe what they're saying. So people know that this person is what you'd say, saying a lie. And people say, yeah, but they believe it. They believe what they're saying is true. But again, there, as you said, that's perspective.
Right. And so the question is, does your perspective serve you, or does your perspective hinder you? That's the question. And we know when someone's perspective hinders them. So I'll give you an example. If I'm working with someone who, wants to make a massive difference or wants a raise or a promotion or whatever it is, right? And they say, yeah, but I'm still new to this job. I don't have enough experience. I'm not sure if I have the education that's required. All those thoughts, all those perspectives will slow them down, will not make them jump up and say, I want that promotion, right? They'll lay low. They'll play smaller than they could. And what we see is that most people play smaller than they can because of the perspectives that hold them in a smaller state.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Awesome. The next thing I'm going to ask, so we're getting closer towards that kind of end point for this first part of the session. I guess for me, to close up this part, a lot of people kind of are looking for quick hacks or quick fixes to be able to unlock performance.
Yeah, for sure.
As we've discussed, it's not something that you kind of do something today and tomorrow you're going to perform at exceptionally high levels. For those people looking for quick fixes, what would be your message in terms of building kind of long sustainable methods to unlock performance?
Okay, well, I'll give you a quick fix, because quick fix and long sustainable methods are two different things, right? Mm-hmm. But let's talk about a quick fix. Grab a piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to give you 2 journaling questions to work on. So question number 1, write this down. What do I really, really want more than anything? And now I put down 2 reallys for a reason, because I want you to think about what you truly deeply want. Not what somebody wants for you, not what you think you should want, not what is expected of you, but what do you truly deeply want more than anything? And then question number 2 is, so what's stopping you from having what you truly want right now? What's getting in the way? Write down all the reasons. And then after you're done, you have 2 options. You can do this work on your own, or you can send this to me and I will personally set up some time to review these questions with you. But look at your responses to question number 2 and understand that these are the beliefs that you have, the perspectives that are fundamentally getting in the way of your performance. These are them. And these are, just like the eye thing, they're not necessarily truths.
Mm.
So if they're not necessarily truths, look at them and say, how do I push back on some of these things? How do I change what I'm saying here? And with every reason you give, ask yourself, could there be another truth? It's very powerful.
In terms of for the short, and then how does that translate into the long term? What are people doing long term?
The long term, if you continue to journal and keep asking yourself one critical question is, when you write something down, ask yourself, could there be another truth? Could there be another way? Is this an actual fact? And you'll notice that very little is actual fact. We're making a lot of things up, and the things we make up hold us back, prevent us from really performing.
That's super interesting. That is super interesting. What we're going to do is we're going to pause for a second. We're going to obviously pick this conversation up with our 18 free club members on the call. To everybody joining us via the stream on YouTube, sadly, this is where you leave us. I hope that you've really enjoyed listening to this conversation. I've certainly got some thoughts out of it that I'm going to take away. We're going to continue the conversation here. Of course, if you want to be part of the next conversation, join us through 1883 Club. So you can go to our website, birminghaменterprisecommunity.co.uk. Click on 1883 Club. You can get yourself signed up. We've got some amazing events coming up, some fantastic speakers coming up. You don't want to miss the kind of conversation that we're about to go into, where we kind of get to go deep dive and ask some questions. So thank you very much. Kim, before we leave the people on YouTube, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, where should they go?
So frameofmindcoaching.com is the best place to go. But I have a podcast called the Frame of Mind Coaching Podcast where I coach people live on the show. So if anyone wants to be a guest, reach out to me. And my email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com.
Fantastic. Kim, stay right there. People on this call, stay right there. Everybody joining on YouTube, thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon.